Users want to know when they're impacted by something. So in other words, if someone assigns a work item to me, I'm going to want to know about it. Or if you change a requirement I'm working on, I want to know about it. Also, I may care if a build fails. It might be my production build. It might be something else that I really need to be alerted when that build fails. So email alerts are something that can be configured within Team Foundation Server. Now we've set up our alerts and we've gone to the TFS administration console and made sure that we've enabled the SMTP server so that we can send alerts. Once we've done that, we can now set up alerts on a per project basis and a per individual basis. Now, it will be done through the web, but I'm going to trigger it from within Visual Studio, like I normally do in these demos. When we open up Visual Studio, we can simply go to Settings, and for this reporting project, you'll see a couple different things, and one of them is Project Alerts. Let's click on Project Alerts, and it brings us here to this main page. Now, we've got a place. I'm going to send my alerts to this location. We can edit it and send it to stephen.borg@nwcadence.com. We can go ahead and send our emails out to a particular email address. But the idea here is we've got some alerts that we want to manage. Now, I can create a whole bunch of my alerts, and we'll show that in a moment. And then these are team alerts that can be set up. And this is the main focus of this demonstration. If I want to send an alert, I can say when my work items are changed by others. So basically, this says anybody on the team. If Bob's email is changed by me, Bob will get an alert. And if Bob changes my work items, I'll get an alert. If I change my own work item, I won't get an alert. So that's if my work items are changed by others. Anything is checked in, a build completes, etc. Now, anything is checked in. Oh my goodness, you can get a ton of alerts. So let's uncheck that and go check out some of these custom alerts. So these custom alerts, here's the current subscriptions. You can see a work item is assigned to me, other. You can click here and notice there's a link here to alerts, advanced alerts management page. We can click other and we get a lot more alerts here. So we have some categories here, check-in. A check-in occurs when a policy is overridden. Remember, someone can override the policy check-in and I may want to get an alert that says, looks like that Steve character checked in again and overrode the policy to not provide a comment or not associate a work item. Also, you can go here to the Advanced Alerts Management page. And in the Advanced Alerts Management page, you can simply construct your own alerts. So I can go in here. Notice I've got a work item alert. So if my work items are changed by others, we can create new ones. We can also filter out and find alerts for a particular user. So for the administrator, we can say, hey, show the administrator's alerts, and we can see all of an individual's alerts. Once we're within there, we could remove them for them. I could click here to delete that selected alert. Reporting team alerts, we can go in here and set in our check-in alert. But we may want to set our check-in alert if we do a new one. And let's do a check-in. A file is checked in under a folder with a specific name. We're going to go with that one as our default. So we'll say the folder path is under our reporting project. Now we could go a little bit further here. We could, do main or something like that. I don't actually have any subfolders under this one. Maybe a more appropriate one would be to go into, for instance, Tailspin Toys. And in Tailspin Toys, we have, some subdirectories like main, Tailspin Toys, documentation. So we could say if anybody checks in additional documentation, I want to know. Or we can say if anyone wants to check in anything under Tailspin Toys all up, I'm going to want to know. So I can click OK. Now we can also specify additional clauses in this case. So the folder path is under that and the file name contains config. Tell me about any config files that are checked in. Or the policy override comment contains the word foo. Whatever we want to do in this case, there's a lot of different clauses that we can add. We'll keep it simple. Leave it at this. And this is how you configure these check-in reports for a team project. Now, individuals can also do their own alerts. You go to Alerts tab and you see all of my alerts, and you can specify my alerts right here. My own work item alerts, my own check-in alerts, things that aren't for the entire team. You can also set alerts inside of Visual Studio. Let me go over to, for instance, our Source Control Explorer and open up something with a little bit of code, like Tailspin Toys, and I could right-click Tailspin Toys here. Just one moment, I think I'm at the wrong place. Oh, indeed I am at the wrong place. Let me give a little tip and a trick. Remember how I talked about the Team Foundation Server Power Tools? You definitely want to install the Power Tools. They allow that quick hit for adding alerts. So notice I could just come in here and right-click Packages, and I would have an alerts piece right here. So you can set an alert right from within Visual Studio, right where you want, as long as you have the Team Foundation Power Tools installed. Now again, they sit outside of the core package, so they're not installed for the purposes of this course, but I highly encourage you to install and configure those Team Foundation Server Power Tools. One other nice thing you get with the Power Tools is you can right-click on any work item as well, just in the gray space, and set an alert on just that one work item without having to go configure a bunch of rules itself. So that's how you can set up alerts, managed both at the team level, and we've talked about how to set up your own alerts using the web. And lastly, we gave some tips and tricks on if you go out and get the Team Foundation Server Power Tools, you can then right-click items within the Source Control Explorer or right in Work Items and get some alert goodness right there as well. In many cases, the out-of-the-box work item types that you have are plenty. You don't need additional work item types, and you can customize within kind of those bounds. However, in this demonstration, we're going to be talking about creating a brand new work item type and integrating it both into a process template and into an existing team project. So let's do that. First thing, let's introduce ourselves to the team project. Here we have our reporting project, and in it we have several different types of work items. It's a Scrum template, so we see bug, task, product backlog item, and a few other work items. Now what we want to do here is add a new type of bug. What we have, if we look at the existing bugs, we have just a very simple bug here. Let's open it up. And it's basically some information about the bug, a title, steps to repro, etc. Not much laid out here. But we want to differentiate between bugs found in development and bugs found by customers. Now, we could do that with just the addition of a drop-down, and we'll see that in a different demonstration. But let's say we really want to separate the two, and we're going to create a defect. And a defect is basically the same sort of thing as a bug, but it's a brand new, different work item type. Let's go ahead and implement that, a defect work item type. And I want to do it in two ways. I think it's important that we do looking at how to change an existing process template so that we can upload the new process template or make modifications to it. But I also want to talk about how to make changes to existing team projects. So when a team project is created from a process template, any changes to the process template itself that are made after that creation date are not brought forward into that team project. You have to upload those things independently and separately. So let's go take a look at making a change to the process template itself. So inside of our downloads folder, we've exported the Microsoft Visual Studio Scrum template that the reporting project was built on. Let's open it up and take a look at some of those work items. Now inside the work item tracking, we have a type definition. I'm going to open that up, and we're going to very simply create a new work item by taking a copy of this bug. We have a bug copy, and we're going to rename it Defect. Now, it's exactly identical currently to this bug. Let's go in and make a quick couple changes. One of the things that we do have to change is this work item type, and we need to name it Defect. It doesn't have to be the same name as the XML, but it often is. Now, this description, we're going to correct the description or change it to read simply bug found by a customer in production. Okay. Let's save it. We now have this new defect work item type. Now, if we went and uploaded this at this moment in time, we would not be able to actually see it. Nothing would happen. We wouldn't error out, but the process template would basically be exactly the same, because we need to step up and look at this work items form here. Let's right click, edit it. And here you notice it defines some link types that we have, and it points to the XML files. And as we scroll down, we see all of these work item type definitions. This one just happens to be indented incorrectly. I'm going to bring it back out. Let's grab bug and make a copy of it. And it doesn't really matter which I copy. All I'm going to do is paste it in here and change this from bug.xml to defect.xml. And this points to that subdirectory type definitions defect XML, and that's where it's going to pull that new work item type. If I save this and close it, now if we go through the process of uploading that work item type, let's go back to our settings, process template manager, and we can upload this work item process template. We're going to grab the Scrum one and overwrite the existing Scrum one. We can just do so. Process template uploaded successfully. Let's hit OK and close. Now, if we created a new team project based on that process template, we would now have both a bug and a defect that we could manipulate. Let's go a little bit further, however, and change our existing reporting project. And to do that, there's several different ways. If you download the TFS Power Tools, you can do things via a plugin up here. It's Tools, and then you can go into the Power Tools and simply upload that new work item right using the Power Tools in a graphical way. Now that's important, but oftentimes we need to run this against 5, 10, 15 different team projects. So in that case, we're going to want to script it. And to script things, we're going to use our command line interface. So first things first, let's go find that appropriate directory that we want to get to. So we're going to go back to our users, and then from here, we're going to go into our administrator account. Let's make sure that's the right location here, where this is all located. Yep, administrator downloads Microsoft Visual Studio. So we're going in here. Let's go to downloads, cd downloads / and we want the Visual Studio Scrum. From within here, we can look at the directory. We want to go into work item tracking. From within work item tracking, we want to go into the type definitions. And here is where we're going to find our XML file, our defect.xml. And from now, we're going to use witadmin. This is a very powerful tool. And let's type in witadmin and just see some of the things that it can do. Let me expand out this screen a bit so you can see some more. You'll notice some of the things we can do are change fields, deactivate link types, export things like categories, and import things, and lots of different things. What we care about for this particular demonstration is import work item type definition. Import work item type definition. So let's run witadmin import work item type definition, WITD, /?. This is going to give us all of the things that we need to provide to upload it. Now notice that we need to provide the collection, where it's located. P is the team project we're going to upload it. And then a couple other things. whack F to provide the file to upload. And we can do whack V if we want to validate the upload. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's specify whack collection, HTTP, whack SRV19428. That's our TFS name. 8080, whack TFS, whack default collection. Whack P : is to provide the project, and we're uploading it to the reporting project. You don't need to put quotes around it unless you have spaces, in which case you would. And the whack F, now I could give a fully qualified location, but I changed right into this directory, so let's just call it defect.xml. And whack V to do that validation. This is going to see, can we actually insert this? Yes, the work item type is valid. Let's go back up and get rid of that whack V and hit enter one more time. The work item type was imported successfully. Let's go back to our project and take a look at those work items. Now, one of the things that will get you is if we drop down and see these work items, you're not going to see it here yet. And that's because the reporting project caches a lot of its activity with the server. We want to go in here and refresh this entire project. And now you see we have bug, task, backlog item, and defect. And at this point, we can open it up and create a new defect. And this would be one, perhaps, Acme Co. found this horrific bug. And we could assign that to somebody if we needed to or whatnot. Save that work item. So in this demonstration, we've done a few things. It's a long presentation, but very important. We've changed a process template, gone through how we would change a process template so that any new projects created would automatically have this defect in it. We have also gone in and we have uploaded that defect.xml file and added that work item to an existing team project through the use of witadmin import WITD, work item type definition. Now in this demonstration, we're going to take another step and add a new field to a work item type. And then we're going to import that into our existing team project. We're going to use our reporting project, the same project we did when we brought in a brand new defect work item type. Now let's extend that defect work item type. So first things first, let's take a look at where we're going. We have this defect. Acme Co. found this horrific bug. Well, we don't necessarily want to put Acme Co. or all of our customers' names right here every single time. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to create a new field, and we can add it right here in status, for instance, and it'll be a drop down that will say which customer submitted this bug. So if somebody calls up, our tech support grabs a bug, customer reports it, we put in here what customer filed the bug. Now we might integrate with our customer relationship management system, our CRM system, so that our salespeople can connect with them after potentially the bug is fixed. Who knows? But we're going to put that in the dropdown. So to do that, first thing we're going to do is come back out to our work item type. We're going to go into that type definition, grab our defect, and edit it. Now inside of a work item type, there's several key areas. And one of those key areas is a field area. And a field defines data that's uploaded to TFS. And the brilliant thing about TFS is even though it's stored in a database, I can do some amazing things here by just simply making some changes in XML. Now I'm going to find something that's kind of similar. This severity. It's got a ref name, it's got a name, it's a string type, it's reportable, and it's got some allowed values, plus a default value. I'm going to grab that one, copy it, and I'm going to go to the bottom of all of these fields. So just above the closing tag for fields here, and I'm going to paste it. And let's go ahead and create our new name for this. We're going to create a new data field, and it's going to be called simply company, potentially. This is the company that submitted the bug. Maybe we want to be a little bit more specific and say something like submitting customer. Now you can have spaces in the field names. Now we're going to specify a ref name. Both the name and the ref name have to be unique across Team Foundation servers. So let's choose a ref name like this. We'll say skillsaw dot submitting customer. Now, in this case, we cannot have any spaces. The next thing is what type is it? It's going to be a string, and it'll be reportable as a dimension. That means that when we get into reporting, we can slice by it. So we can say, show us all the bugs for this customer. Or show us, or in this case, all the defects for this customer. Now, here's our allowed values. And let's put in some of these allowed values. The allowed value might be Acme Corp. It might be MyCo. Might be Yourco. And we could have as many as we want. Let's just leave it at those 3. And then we're going to have a default value for it of Acme. Now you don't have to have a default. And if you leave out the default, it defaults to nothing. Now, I'm not sure if we really want a default here. People might just submit bugs and just always keep associating it with Acme. So we could just get rid of that field. Now it'll be blank. Couple other things we might want. The fact that we have allowed values means that we can only have Acme, Myco, Yorko. We could also do suggested values. That would default to those three. They'd appear in a drop-down, but you could change it to anything. There's other types of fields up here, and you can scroll up to see some of these other types and things that we can do, things that are based off of valid users. So the drop-down has to be a member of that valid users. And I'm going to grab this little piece of text right here, required. And let's go ahead and make our field required. So we can go down here after the allowed values and put required. Now that could be actually before as well. Now that will give us our new field. But the problem is just because we have a field doesn't mean we have it displayed anywhere or use it. And let's go ahead and correct this misspelling up here. Make sure that we have that changed back to Skillsoft. Skillsoft.submitting customer. And looks like we're good. Let's scroll down and see some of these other areas. Now the states also have workflows. So we might go through several states. We started at new, then go to approved, committed, and done. Let's scroll down. There's transitions between each state. Like it might not be valid to go from approved to done without going through some other state in between, maybe committed. So we can scroll down and see all of those transitions that we can provide. And as we go down, we then get to workflow. And the workflow is basically broken up like this. Here's a group. We've got a margin, some column width, several different things here. And we wanted to put it in under status. So let's copy this control down and paste it. And this will be, the field name is Skillsoft.submitting customer. It's a field control. That means it just shows data. We need to give it a label. And the label will just read customer. We kind of know it's the submitting customer. At this point, we have completed this. Let's just validate that we have Skillsoft.submitting customer, that we've spelled it correctly. Let's go up and check out our field. I always like to do a little double check before I upload things. Skillsoft.submitting customer. Looks good. Let's save it. And then we're going to go back to our command prompt where we had that wit admin command, and we're going to run it again. This time we're going to take that same defect and move it up into the reporting project. Work item type completed successfully. Let's go back into Visual Studio. Make sure that we do a refresh. I'll close this defect. And then we want to come back in and get that defect. Now I happen to remember that was defect 10, so we can just enter 10 here. And here's our defect. Notice we can no longer save it because this customer dropdown is a required field. We don't need to say Acme Company up here in the title anymore. We can drop down and choose Acme Corp from the dropdown here. Then click Save. Now in this demonstration, we added a new field to track data. We've done a lot more though than meets the eye. Just by adding that new field, that we've made a change to a database, happened behind the scenes. It even changed the data warehouse and the OLAP cube so that I can slice and dice by this thing because I said I wanted it reportable as a dimension. There is a lot more to work item customization than we just covered in adding this field. Work items have states, workflows, a whole bunch of things that can be modified. In our case, we've simply modified the fields because that's the most common modification that you'll need to make. But in this demonstration, we added an extra field, we created it, made it required, provided a list of items in a drop-down, and then we also uploaded it into the new team project. One last thing before we go. We hard-coded those names right here in the work item type. So we have Acme Corp, Myco, and Yorko all right here in this dropdown. That may not be the best because that means whenever we get a new customer, we're going to need to go into every team project and update their work item types. That seems a little bit wonky. If you don't want to do that, you use something called a global list. And we'll be covering global lists later. Now, there's often a case where you need to make a change to the actual workflow of a bug definition or some work item definition. Let's take a look at what I mean. Let's open this up And we have our defect that we're working with. Now it's in the new state. We can move from new to any of these states. We go from new to approved, say, and from approved we can save the work item, and then we can go from approved to committed. That's when the Scrum team commits to doing the work, and we can move directly to done. So we move to done because work is finished. That seems a little sketchy. It was approved, no one made a commitment, and we got it done. Sounds like people might be skipping over some of the process that we've put in place. Now, should we allow them to? Arguably, yes. Arguably, no. It really depends on your context. But for our discussion, we don't want people going from approved all the way to done. We want to make sure that they go through committed. So I'd like to remove that transition between those states. So let's go ahead and move that transition. I'm going to save this work item the way it is. It's in committed state. Actually, let's move it back to new so we can walk it through the process once we've defined the new process. To do that, I'm going to open up our defect here. Let me keep this desktop clean. Open up our defect, bringing it up in Notepad. Let's blow it up. And we're going to be going through a place right here which talks about workflow. This is our workflow. Now we have several states. We have new, approved, committed, done, and removed. Now we could change removed and just call it like rejected or ejected or something like that. We can make changes here. We can actually add new states, etc. And while we add a new state, we can do some interesting things. So in order to get to the done state, this scheduling effort, the total effort taken, becomes a read-only field. We don't want people finishing things up and then making changes to that. The closed date is emptied when we go to committed. So now in a normal workflow, that's no big deal. But if we had gone to closed and then back to committed, we'd want to make sure that that closed date field was now empty. So we can do that sort of a thing as well. Now, in addition to doing it actually in the state, we can also work through transitions. Now, we're not going to add any additional states. And that's just simply some metadata here. But let's do add and modify some of these transitions. You have to always start some transition, and there can be only one, from quote, quote, to some state. That's the new. You create a new work item. It goes from here to somewhere. In our case, it goes to new. And then you can have some reasons. And there's several types of reasons you can have. And then you have a default reason. In this case, let me kind of clean it up a little bit. But we have a default reason and a reason. Both of these will appear. Build failure or new defect reported. So we have a new defect when a build failure occurs or when a new defect has been reported. That's what we have. We also have these other transitions. Now remember, we had that really problematic one. New to approved, new to committed, new to done. We were okay with that, but we didn't want to go from approved all the way to done without stepping through committed. So let's go find that. There's committed to approved. That's probably okay. New to removed. Here's approved to renewed. That's okay. Keep going down. And eventually, we'll find our approved to done. There it is. We don't want to go directly from approved to done because the work was finished. We think that's kind of cheating. So we're going to get rid of that entire transition. Now we could delete it and remove the transition, which is what we're going to do, or we could simply change the reason. If you went from approved to done, it's because like work no longer necessary or something like that. But we're going to get rid of that transition completely and save it. One other thing I want to mention very briefly is some things in the forms before we move on. This is that last one here. And we did a demonstration where we made a modification of the form, but there's a lot of things you can do in here. We can create groups, etc. of things. We can create columns. Groups can contain columns. We can have tab groups. Here we have a tab with steps to reproduce. We have a tab labeled system, tab labeled test cases. We can have a lot of different things here, and they're all made up of controls. Here's a link control option, what should be shown, etc. I encourage you to look through this as well as look through the MSDN documentation for all the wonderful things that you can do kind of in that form area. But to get back to our core topic in this demonstration, which really is just coming back in and making sure that we eliminate that step from approved to done. We want people to go through the appropriate steps. So let's save it. Let's go back to our command line and re-import this using our WIT admin tool. The work item imported successfully. Let's go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to close Defect 10 again. Refresh everything so we get new stuff from the server. And then I'm going to reopen Defect 10 again. Now let's see how it works. We're going to go into the state. We're going to go from new to approved by the product owner, save that work item, and now we're going to try to go from approved to done. And you'll notice that we can no longer go from approved to done because we've actually modified the flow of this work item. So in this demonstration, you've seen how we can make some changes to the actual workflow of the system. Now, this can be a very complicated workflow. I've worked through some organizations where we've had more than 30 states. I just really don't recommend that, but it was a special case. Massive number of states with a lot of very restrictive transitions. Totally possible to do. Very possible to do, in fact. However, try to keep it simple. As a best practice, keep your number of states reasonable, no more than necessary, and keep the number of transitions not too restrictive. You want to add enough transitions that it's not very restrictive. Otherwise, people get a little frustrated with the tool at times. So in this demonstration, we've made a change to the work item, uploaded it, and now we have a new workflow. For those users without Visual Studio, but do have Team Explorer installed, they can set up connectivity to Team Foundation Server much like anyone else. And we're going to demonstrate that as part of this demonstration. One thing to note, when they go to fire up Team Explorer, they're not going to find it under Team Explorer. In fact, they're going to find it under Visual Studio. So they're actually going to run Visual Studio 2013. Now this version that I'm running is just the 2013 shell. It has no development environment, etc. This is what the Team Explorer looks like. It's basically a stripped down version of Visual Studio. So for those who have installed Team Explorer, remember the link to get it started is still Visual Studio, even though it's a stripped down version. Now I want to show you how to connect to your Team Foundation server from within Team Explorer. And in this case, it's very similar, in fact, identical to the experience inside of Visual Studio. Let's go up and click this little Connect to Team Projects button. We can connect that. And we'll see that we can sign up for a Team Foundation service account. We've got some Git repositories. Let's select our team projects. And that's going to pop up a nice UI. And from here, we note that we don't have any servers installed, or we may not have any servers installed. Let's go to Servers, add a new server, and we can provide the name for that server. So I'll say server 19428, and that's the server that we're going to tie to, and we can click OK. Now I'm going to click cancel because I already have it here. Don't want to raise that error, but when you hit add, it'll go ahead and add it right here. At this point, you don't hit connect yet. You actually hit close, and then you can select it from the drop-down. Once we've selected it, and we've selected a Team Foundation server, we can then connect to that Team Foundation server, and we are in. That's how you connect to a Team Foundation server from within Team Explorer. When working with Team Foundation server work items, one of the things that people really like to be able to do is integrate with Excel. Excel is a very powerful tool. It's commonly used. Everyone's familiar with it, and it allows things like bulk editing to be done in TFS. So let's take a look at how we might connect to Excel. Now we're going to start by opening up Excel. So let's just fire up Excel directly. And once we're in Excel, we'll open up a blank workbook, and you'll have this team icon here that says team, and it's a list of menus. If you don't see this here, it may be that the add-on isn't active. You can go to Tools, Options, and then down on the Add-ins center, you'll see a group of add-ins. And it's active here, but sometimes it's down here in the inactive add-ins. That would predominantly be if you installed it, if you installed Office after you installed TFS. So sometimes those appear as inactive. In either case, or sorry, Visual Studio and Team Explorer, you can go down here and go to COM add-ins and go there, and then you can enable those. Just click them and click OK. It's already enabled. It was enabled by default, but if you haven't seen that, that's how you would enable it. Now we need to connect Excel out to Team Foundation Server. To do so, we're going to up here to New List. It's the only thing that's really active right here. And when we click New List, it's going to prompt us to say, hey, we need to connect to TFS somewhere. Now, I've already connected to Team Foundation Server from this computer. If I hadn't, I would go here to Servers and add one identically to how I would do it in Visual Studio. And you would just point to this TFS server. In this case, we just go to Servers, select our server, or we could say Add, in which case we would just type in our server name here. So, for instance, server 14928. And then we'd hit OK. Now, it so happens that I already have that server attached, so it won't need to re-add that one. Oops, I misspelled it anyway. So let's cancel. There's my server. Close, and I'm attached to the server. Let's grab the reporting project, for example, and we want to connect to it. Now, we're asking for a new list, and predominantly, the reason you connect Excel to Team Foundation Server in this way is to edit work items. Now I have a list of queries and I can drop down and I'll see all of the queries I've created. Now I added a couple shared queries here so I can expand those out, and I have like tasks assigned to me and a user story tree. Excel can handle not just two-dimensional but even hierarchical relationships. In fact, to see the hierarchical relationships, let's use the user story tree. I'm going to click that one. I could also enter a list of work items I wanted to get, but I'm going to run with a query. Now click OK, and it reaches out to Team Foundation Server and returns that query back to me. Now I want to make sure that you understand that this is merely a reflection of what's in TFS, but I could take this, disconnect it from TFS, pass it all around the company, and anyone could enter data, and then I could come back and publish it back to TFS. But if we go to TFS and look, these are the product backlog items we'd see, and notice there's a hierarchy here. These tasks fall underneath this product backlog item. There's this nice hierarchy here that you can see, and it's based on Title 1, Title 2. This is a list in Excel, so we can expand it out and get one more if we want, and we could add, for instance, another task. And I'm going to do a task here, and this task I want to also be a child of this PBI, and this could be test everything. And I'll assign that to the administrator, and the state is to do. It's something that needs to be done. Notice it doesn't have an ID, and I can't set an ID here, but I've connected Excel up. Now when I click Publish, it's actually going to push all of this back to Team Foundation Server and give me an ID in this location. Now, again, things that you do in Excel, you push Publish and it goes back to TFS. If your Excel is out of sync, you can click Refresh, and that'll pull down the data from TFS into your Excel. Now, a couple other things. Let's say I was working on these. They're no longer to do, but they're in progress. Notice how I can highlight in progress and then drag it down and make multiple changes very easily. Let me publish all those back, and now note that they're all in progress. They're all things I'm going to be working on. Now to verify and validate that they're there, I'm going to close Excel. We're not going to bother even saving it. We've shown how to connect to it now. And we're going to go into Visual Studio, and we're going to run that same query. I'm going to open up the work items, and there's the user story tree. I'll double click it. And when that query returns, notice that test everything is in there. And that the state is in progress. You'll see the state's in progress here. And if we go down, we can look at all of the changes that have happened in its history and notice that this change just occurred to do to in progress, and we did that from Excel. Now, that's the way to connect to Team Foundation Server directly from Excel. If you prefer, you can come in to Visual Studio or the Team Explorer, and you can right-click things. Like, let me right-click tasks assigned to me and choose to open that in Microsoft Excel. That's kind of the flip side. From a Visual Studio, you can go and it'll open up Excel for you, automatically connect, and put everything in. Now we could make changes here, do anything that we wanted to as well, and push Publish. So it's basically in that interaction. So in this demonstration, we've showed you how you can connect Team Foundation Server to Excel and how Excel is just one more user interface for interacting with Team Foundation Server work items. There are a lot of powerful front ends to Team Foundation Server, things like Excel, the web, etc. One of the most powerful and useful is Microsoft Project. Project has some capabilities that are very, very nice, and their interaction with Team Foundation Server is very tight. So let's take a look at how we can connect Microsoft Project to Team Foundation Server. First thing we do is simply open up Project. When Project's open, you can select a blank project, and then click on the Team tab. Now, if you don't see the Team tab, please check out the Excel video connecting to Microsoft Excel for troubleshooting. It's the same troubleshooting steps. You can go to Choose a Team Project from here, and we're going to select our reporting project as our demo here. Click Connect. Oh, by the way, if you don't see a server noted, you can simply click Servers and add your server to this place right here. We're already added because we've connected from this machine before, so we'll simply connect to our reporting project. Once we're connected, we need to get some work items. Let's click Get Work Items, and we'll select a query. You can also get it by IDs or kind of a filter where the title contains something and specific work item types. We're going to do it through a query. So we're going to the user story tree, and we can find that and see all of these various things. We'll select all the work items. We want them all, and click OK to pull those down. Now, one caveat, we can only pull down items that happen to be in the same team project. So even though a query can cross team projects, Excel and Microsoft Project can only pull things down inside of a single team project. But at this point, we can see all of our items. We can lay them out here and how long we have allocated for each of those. Now, we don't have any durations on these things, so we could bump them up and say this task is going to take a day, for instance, and this task one day for this one and 1 day for this one as well. And maybe this is going to be a 3-day task or a 2-day task and a 1-day task. You can kind of see these tasks lay out. And currently, they're all being run consecutively. Now with Microsoft Project, one of the nice things we can do is we can say that, we want to be able to build some cool reports, but that may take a dependency on another one. So we can put dependencies in between our various pieces. To do that, we simply drag and drop. Grab that, drag it down, drop it. Let's establish some dependencies here. And maybe here as well, between some of these tasks, predecessor-successor relationships. And if I grab this correctly, there we go. We can establish a predecessor-successor relationship between some of these things to build more reports, etc. So you can see that we've stretched these out. We're basically just using Project to establish dependencies between things, a predecessor-successor relationship, and also establishing time it takes for these. At some point, we can then publish, and we can go back and take a look in Team Foundation Server and see what we've done. So let's see, build more great reports, build some cool reports. Let's close this. We're not going to save Project at all. And we're going to go back here to Visual Studio and take a look at our Work Items tab and run that user story tree again. Now it looks very similar to what we have before, but let's go ahead and open up one of these, like Improved Reporting Front End. Now when we look at the links, we'll see that we have an additional link. We now have predecessor and successor links that are defined for that item. Also, notice that remaining work has been moved to 16. That's because we moved it to 2 days in Microsoft Project. So these things sync back and forth. Now, as a TFS administrator, you might be called on to create additional linkages between Project and TFS for new custom fields, for example. You can do that in the process template itself. There's a whole way to make that change occur. It's one of the XML files. It just says, here's the source, here's the target, and here's how they should be linked between the two. Again, more advanced usage, just wanted to let you know that that was possible. And that's how we've established that linkage between project and Team Foundation Server. Now, before we leave, I want to show you one other way to link that is sometimes more common, and that's simply to right-click the query and say, Open in Microsoft Project. When you click that and open it up in Microsoft Project, it will actually fire up Project for you and execute all of those queries. So you can see those queries and where they appear. So in this demonstration, we've shown how we can go into Microsoft Project and connect to Team Foundation Server, and how we can go to Team Foundation Server and open up a query inside of Microsoft Project. If you happen to be at a remote office or far away from the base Team Foundation Server, you might be pulling some fairly large files across the network. Now, if that's the case, you might want to install and configure a TFS proxy server. And we've done that as part of this course. Now, in this demonstration, we're going to show you how you can connect Visual Studio to that proxy server. Basically, what we're going to want to do is make sure that we go through the proxy server to download any files from Team Foundation Server rather than going directly to the server. That can help speed things up, especially if there's a lot of people in your office accessing TFS. So let's do that. Let's configure it. I'm going to open up Visual Studio, and inside of Visual Studio, you'll see I've got my Team Explorer. I'm connected to server 19428, and I have a proxy server on SRV 19432. So I'm going to go over to configure that, and we can go to Tools, Options, and inside of the options, you're normally presented with an environment, projects and solutions. You're going to want to go to source control and then into Visual Studio Team Foundation Server. And that's where you can find this use proxy server for file downloads. You know, I want to show you a quick way to get here as well. Let me cancel this altogether. In Visual Studio 2013, we also have this quick launch bar. You can click that and just type proxy. It's a configuration inside here. It's not even one of the main titles, but it's just a feature inside. So I can just type proxy and it gives me this option to open this up and go directly to the right location. Just a little tip. Let's go to use the proxy server for file downloads. We're going to provide the proxy server name. In our case, that proxy server, we just need the name. That proxy server is SRV 19432. And then we provide a port for that proxy server. Now, this will be defined when you do the installation, but the default port is 8081. We then click OK, and it goes ahead and connects to that proxy server. That's all there is to it. We're now connected to the proxy server. By the way, if we had entered something incorrect there and it couldn't connect to the proxy server, it would automatically raise an error and give us a problem. In fact, let's take a very quick look at that. Let's go back to the proxy server. If I pointed to a server that maybe doesn't have a proxy server, like our database, you'll see that it can't connect and it raises a warning right away. So I'll click OK here, and we'll bring that back to the actual proxy server. Now, one last thing I want to mention about proxy servers that I think is pretty neat is even if I have configured this to use the proxy server, let's say the proxy server goes down, just I don't know, someone trips over the cable, it goes out, whatever it is, we lose our proxy server. The nice thing is you are not broken. Automatically, Visual Studio, if it cannot communicate with the proxy server, will reach out to the base server and get the source control from there. So it doesn't even interfere with your workflow. So in this demonstration, we've seen how to configure Visual Studio to use a proxy server. Files stored in Team Foundation version control are great. They're archived. You have them backed up. You can do all sorts of wonderful things. You never lose data when it's in TFS. But to manipulate that code, you need to pull it down locally onto your machine. So how do you do that? Basically, through a Team Foundation server workspace. Workspaces are the mappings between the server and your local machine. Now, this is one of the most confusing areas of Team Foundation server version control. And I get a lot of questions of people asking me, how do I fix this? What do I do? And a lot of times it's a workspace problem. So this section focuses really on workspaces. Let's take a look at what they are, and then we'll dive into it in more detail in different modules. So let's come right into Tailspin Toys. I'm going to go to the Source Control Explorer, and we see a couple things. We have a workspace up here that says PC19431. That happens to be the name of the machine. And that's the default. You always get this default workspace. And if I look here on the side, I can see I've got 5 projects here. 2 of them are in black, Active Project and Tailspin Toys. The others are gray. If you click on a gray one, you'll notice that we have not mapped what's in the server to a local directory. Whereas if you click here on a dark one, you'll see that we do have a mapping. The local path is c:/source Tailspin Toys. And this is for each workspace. Each workspace can have a different mapping. So it looks like Active Project and Tailspin Toys are both mapped in this workspace. So if I drive into it a little bit, notice this changes the local path up above. And I can always go out and look at the local path and see all of the files that are there. And these are a reflection of what's out on the server. And you manipulate workspaces by getting latest inside of them and whatnot. Now, let's take a closer look at this workspace. If we drop down, we can click on the workspaces ... link, and that brings us to the workspace we have. Let's go ahead and edit this workspace. And when we edit it, we note that we've got a mapping from Active Project to c:/code Active Project, and a mapping from Tailspin Toys to c:/source Tailspin Toys, and then a further hierarchy down. Now, we can look at Advanced and see some more things about this. We see who the owner is, what computer it's on, what type of workspace is it. Is it a local or a server workspace? Local is the default in my implementation. Also, you can set up a file time. File time is, do you want to see when you got the file, the current file, or when it was last checked in, when it was edited or last checked in. So you can use those. Permissions, this is a private workspace. You can use a limited public workspace where you share it, or just a fully public workspace as well. Most cases, people don't change the permissions here much. They may change the file time and the location, but we'd stick with local if you can. That's the advanced components of this. Now, let's add a secondary workspace. Let's take a look at Active Project, and right now it's in c:/code Active Project. If we create a new workspace, we can call it whatever we want. Let's call it the machine name, and then, for lack of a better thing, new, and click OK. What you'll find is that if we select this workspace from up here, everything is gray. We have no mappings. So we don't have any mappings any longer with this Active Project. But in this workspace, we can now map that to a different location. We could put in c:/new location \active p, or whatever we want to call it, and map it. And then do a get latest, and it'll pull it down. Now notice that when we're working now in this workspace, the new workspace, the pipeline is at this c:/new location. You can have as many workspaces as you like. Let's flip over to the other workspace, our older one, and notice that that same project is mapped to c:/active project. Now, I wouldn't recommend using workspaces in place of branching. Branching is far more powerful. You can merge between them, etc. However, this is an area where you may consider needing to have multiple workspaces. One area where I recommend people have multiple workspaces is if they're needing to merge between QA and prod. So you don't really want to do any edits in prod. So what you do is you create a workspace for QA and a workspace for dev that are independent, so you never kind of accidentally are working in the wrong location because you don't even have it mapped. But when you go to do your merge, you have to have both the target and the source in your workspace. So in that case, you may have a separate merge workspace that has both the target, the prod, and QA, so you can merge between them. Anyway, that's the basic workspace piece. And we can configure workspaces. We can basically have as many workspaces as we like. One final note on workspaces, they are stored on the server. So what that means is you can go out to the server and see everybody's workspace. In fact, if someone wanted to come and download the code I had, I may have done a get latest into my workspace of a prior version of the code, they could say, I want exactly what Steve has in his workspace. And they could grab the code from my workspace, the analogous versions, and pull it down to their workspace. So they can do stuff like that. You can get kind of fancy. For the most part, however, it's simply a mapping between the server and the local machine. Now, before we leave this demo, let's do the last thing with a workspace. We've added one, we've modified one. Let's go into our workspaces, find this workspace that we no longer want, and we can remove this workspace. It'll say, hey, are you sure you want to delete it? Any pending changes will be lost, it's permanent, etc. Yes, we'd like to remove it. We'll go ahead and remove that workspace and click Close. So now we can no longer select that workspace from the dropdown. So in this demonstration, we've seen how to work with basic workspaces and configure them in various ways. One of the things TFS administrators are called on to do is solve problems that developers have gotten themselves into. For instance, somebody locking some files and going on vacation or accidentally deleting something. And although developers should be able to have the skills to fix that themselves, very often they come to the TFS administrator first. And so you need to know how to help walk them through and teach them how to deal with those kind of problems. And sometimes they may not have the appropriate permissions, and so they wouldn't be able to. However, at some point, it should be not the TFS administrator's role to do this, but somewhere down the chain. But you need to know because you need to be able to show people how to do it. So in this demonstration, we're going to go in and do some version control operations and kind of work with version control in different ways that might be more advanced uses that will get people into trouble. So let's open up Visual Studio and go into our Source Control Explorer. And we have two projects. We've got this active project and this Tailspin Toys. Let's say people are working on Tailspin Toys. And I come in, or somebody comes in to this Tailspin model, and they do a checkout for edit. Now, by default, when someone checks something out, it doesn't lock any files. Other people can check it out. They can edit it, check it back in. But sometimes a developer might be making a change that's so destructive that they don't want other people to have to merge those changes into their radical differences that they're creating. So they want to lock it. So I might go into this model folder and I can right click it. And when I check out for edit, one of the things as a developer that I can do is I can change that to allow other users to check out, but to completely ban them from checking in. So basically, I'm locking this source control. So if I click that, it's going to check out, and notice that the pending change is for the administrator who's got it locked. Not only are they editing it, but they have it locked. Additionally, I could go to something like Tailspin Schema, and you have another command, which is simply advanced lock, where I'm going in, and this you may want to do as an administrator, but many devs can do it too, and just simply lock this. That doesn't allow any changes to it. We just kind of shut it down and locked it. So we've done two things here. We have a developer who's checked out some files and locked them so no one else can commit and merge. And we have someone who has just flat out locked these files. And that might be you. If it is, we need to unlock those files. And there's two ways to do so. We can do it through the UI, which I find to be the most pleasant, and we can do it through the command line. From the UI, we're going to simply find these things that are locked. And as an administrator, you'll have sufficient permission to do this. You can right-click, go to Advanced, and simply choose Unlock. That will unlock that whole folder and allow people to then manipulate and work with that folder. Now, other people may have done this lock on model. And if we open it up, all these things are locked and for edit. Even if I am not the administrator, if I have the appropriate permissions, which is basically unlock other users' files, I can go in here, right click, and can go in. You notice it's not a lock here, but I can unlock their things as well. Now to do that, notice that when they did the checkout, they have all of these things checked out. They're right here and they're locked and edited. I can unlock. We saw here, right click, advanced. Notice this folder is not locked, so we can't do it here. However, we can simply highlight all of these elements here, right click, and with the appropriate permissions, I can unlock them from here. Now, that doesn't mean that the other person doesn't have them checked out. They still have them checked out. They still might be making changes. In the worst case scenario, someone's checked them out, they're editing them, and they're no longer with the company, or they're going to be gone for so long, we just want to discard all those. We can also, on their behalf, we can undo any pending changes. Basically, that's going to go in and say, we're going to get rid of any changes that these people have pended against it. It doesn't undo their pending changes in their machine. So their machine will still have any changes that they've made. But the fact that they are editing those files from the server's perspective, the server knows absolutely nothing about those edits any longer. So that's how we can undo someone's changes. Again, you probably aren't going to undo their changes too often, but it's something that you might need to do. Now let's talk about something that really can throw people. And that is if we go up to like Python data pipeline. And we've got this data pipeline, and somebody runs in here and they decide to delete that file. So they delete it and go into their pending changes and commit that deletion. Delete the data pipeline and make a check-in. What that's going to do is it's going to get rid of it. Now, version control is there so that you don't ever lose anything. And with TFS, you can always get it back. However, a couple things to note. If you want to get rid of it permanently, you can use a destroy command from the command line. However, that's rare to use. We're not going to cover that. This is just simply deleted, but I can't see it. And your people will call you up and say, how do I get access to this again? And basically, all you do is you go to Tools, Options, and within the options, we need to scroll down to Source Control, choose Source Control, expand it out, and then inside the environment, we can take a look, inside of Team Foundation Server, we can click Show Deleted Items in the Source Control Explorer. That's one way to do that. Then we click OK, and now you'll see that those things now appear in the Source Control Explorer. And not just for us as an administrator. We can show that to any developer, and then developers can go in and see it. And when they find it, they can look at it and right-click, and they could roll back or undelete. In general, undelete is the preferred. They'll click undelete, and it will undelete it and pend it as an undelete. And I might say, get back the pipeline. Check in, and now our data pipeline is back in, and we've undeleted those items. Now, as a quick aside, I want to make sure that you understand that there's more to it than this. We can go into the command window, and in the command window, we have things like TF lock. TF lock is a tool that we can lock or unlock from the command line our version control, our source control. We can also do TF checkout. And with checkout, we can pass in some locks, and we can specify a lock that we want when we're checking things out. We can also do a TF edit, and that's basically just a synonym for checkout. So it's the same thing as a checkout. Let me just do a quick look at all of TF. So with TF, you have a lot of different options. Unshelving, undoing pending changes from a workspace, and a lot of these things, undelete. These things can be done by an administrator across the team project collection. So I really encourage you to go take a look at all of the different things that you can do with the command line. Once again, sometimes it's easier to do things not from the command line, but instead do them from the UI. But having that command line in your back pocket is often a good idea.